Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me here. The whole day has been wonderful so far. As some of the other speakers today, I am going to have some of the similar uh, outcomes that we were talking about. So in my class, I am a psychology professor, and so I brought data science into an undergraduate psychology course. Next slide, please. So the course that I am teaching that I brought data science into this semester is called Contemporary Issues in Psychological Sciences. And I thought it was really important to talk about it in this class because we can really kind of adjust this class to talk about anything that's going on in the world today that might be important to psychology. So we talk a lot about things like COVID or Black Lives Matter. There are lots of things. It's kind of like a current events type of framework. And then we link it to psychological theories, psychological frameworks, and how it can kind of change the mind and behaviors and the way that people interact in their world. So understanding how to bring in data with those conversations is a really important part of understanding psychology. So for the lecture module, I explained how data are used to describe and explore both questions and phenomena relating to the mind and behavior. So that's really how we kind of bring in the psychological aspect. I then reviewed both quantitative and qualitative research to give them an overview of the differences between the two, but then focused on the quantitative and went over the procedures for conducting quantitative analyses using SPSS. So all of the students except one had already taken our psychological research methods and statistics course. So this was a review for almost everybody, but it was a well-needed review. This is a difficult course for many of our majors. And so having a review module actually really helped them. And I went through step by step, going through what these analyses look like in SPSS, what we use each analysis for answering questions, which analysis goes with which kind of question, and then how they would use it in their own individual projects. So their assignment was to use any data set. I provided 10 data sets. They also had the option to collect their own data or to use an existing data set out in the world somewhere. So we talked a little bit about big data and cloud computing. I told them that they were not expected to know to that extent of computing for this first assignment, but that they did have the opportunity to go and explore and see what they could find. And I was happy that a couple of them actually did go and explore some of the websites that I posted. One of them used their own data set that they found out in the World Wide Web. I had three people conduct their own survey research. So they went out and surveyed other classmates. And then the rest of the students used the data sets that I got. Most of them were from government databases, such as the CDC. We used some from like the National Center for Educational Statistics, National Institutes of Health. So I went and got as many as I could find that I thought were relevant to kind of current events that were going on. So you'll see kind of what I pulled in some of the examples that I have coming up and what they were required to do as a part of this data assignment was to give me some kind of descriptive statistic. So this could be something like minimum, maximum, mean, standard deviation, frequencies and percentages. So a lot of people decided to use their descriptive statistics for describing the sample. So we knew what kind of participants were in these studies. They also had to do some kind of analysis that showed a relationship between two of the variables in their data set. So it wasn't enough just to describe, they had to also look at relationships between the variables. And then the last thing is that they had to visually represent their data in some form or fashion. I didn't give them any restrictions. I told them they could do anything that gave me a visual representation. So in most cases, that was some kind of pie or bar graph. I had some scatter plots. something to give me an idea of how to look at the data visually. Next slide, please. So as with the other faculty adopters, I have survey data from the pre and post-test survey I gave about how they feel about data science. And I should have recoded like SK did so that the higher scores indicate greater agreement. So I have that noted when we look at the results, but the answer choices indicate 1 was strongly agree and 5 was strongly disagree. So let's go to the next slide and I'll show you what those results, 2 slides. So first, let me tell you about my class. Our participants were 23 students. And I think it's important to point out that all of our students in this class really aligned with both HBCU students and psychology students. So as far as HBCU students, they were mostly Black students. But then as far as psychology students, they were mostly female students. We only had about a quarter of male students. We did have some that identified as non-binary. And I think a quarter male is actually pretty high for psychology. So I was a little excited there that we got some more representation than we may normally would have. Okay, now let's go to the next slide and see these results. So here are the questions that were in the pre and post-test survey. And Dr. Deb, if you could click one more time, there's that reminder that shows us that the lower scores are greater agreement. So the pre-test is in gray, and every time the score got lower, that means that they agreed more. So they believed that data science was more interesting. They felt that they could explain data science more, that they know the tools more. And as you'll see, this trend continues for all but 2 of these questions. So they felt that the applied data science assignment, this hands-on task, could increase their interest. That one got higher. I'll talk about that in a little bit. The other one that got higher is that data science is boring. So that's good because a higher score means that they don't agree with that. So at first they kind of at the midline, maybe it's boring, but after they did the assignment, they agreed less. So that's good. They don't think it's boring anymore. So I think this shows overall good scores. I didn't have enough participants to test for statistical significance, but I did it anyway, just because I was curious. And although it may not be statistically sound, the bigger gaps that you see, such as the difference between can explain at pre and post, is statistically significantly different. So we see that this data science assignment really did seem to make a difference in them feeling confident in their abilities to, in their interest and their abilities to use and explain data science. Let's go to the next slide and I'll show you some examples of what they did. So they did some really cool assignments, and here are some of the presentations that they did. So one of our contemporary issues was health. So you can see there's a nice pie graph there. That one is talking about, this was one of our students who created their own survey, and they asked people and if their family had a history of specific health issues. And then with that, they asked questions about their eating habits. So this large purple portion shows that there are a lot of people who have some kind of history in their family of a medical problem. And then they talked about how they may not be eating healthfully, even though they know that there are family history of medical issues. So then they went on to describe how, this could be a real problem and we should really look more deeply into why people aren't doing better and trying to be healthier, even though they know that there's really, this kind of predisposition given their family history.
Dr. Minor, you have 1 minute.
Okay. So this was just kind of our example of some of the assignments. And there was a real bell curve here. So the average score for the assignment was a 77. So if we go to the next slide, I will kind of conclude. So The survey data said these students really seem to be interested and they feel pretty confident in their ability to perform data-related tasks. But the actual performance, an average of 77, I was kind of hoping for higher. And I think also the pre and post test score, where they said that this CADS assignment didn't really motivate them as much to do better in data science. I think it might have been due to the time in the semester. So as we are kind of nearing the end, I think all of the projects and papers and assignments are piling up. And so I'm thinking that might have been part of what was going on there, that they actually like data science, but the idea of having another assignment was not as exciting to them. So I think including more hands-on data science activities across various majors and courses could be beneficial. And I think this is really important. And as we heard in the keynote this morning, like it's very, very important as our students prepare to enter the workforce. So I think that this is a really important thing that you guys are doing. I think that the Center for Applied Data Science is necessary, and we just need to keep working to include everything in more courses.